Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Jennie. I'm the Director of Outreach and Education here at Theatre Aquarius. And it's my great privilege and honor to be able to spend this time chatting with you and the amazing playwright of this beautiful play, Serving Elizabeth, Ms. Marcia Johnson. Please. Once an actor, always an actor. So that's actually great. Welcome, Marcia. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And that's great segue to maybe introduce yourself a little about your professional background and your path as an artist.
So I wrote my first play called You Look Great Too, inspired by a really bad breakup. And it turned into a comedy, and that's just where I lean when I think I'm being really serious, and then I'll have a reading and people are laughing hysterically, and I'll think, oh. So rather than go in and make it not funny, I just lean into it. And so I think that's kind of my specialty, dealing with serious issues while making people laugh.
And so you've leaned on your own personal experiences in those early days. Do you tend to, in all of your plays, or in a play like this, is there some of you in this play?
Well, there tends to be a character that's really similar to me. There tends to be a character that if they didn't have any other actors around, I'd be able to play that part. There tends to be. But I'm working on 2 plays coming up, and there isn't a role for me. So
that's an interesting, so do you feel like, does that mean you're officially saying, I'm a writer? Do you find that you've found a way to like it?
Well, yeah, I do love writing now, but it just shows that I'm trying to be true to whatever story that I'm telling, that I'm not shoehorning myself in there. So it'll be a surprise when I'll come through the list of characters and go, oh, there's nothing. Well, fine. All right. That's good for me. But just because there isn't a part for me doesn't mean that there isn't a part for a Black woman.
Right.
I just made this pact with myself a few years ago. Some of my favorite writers, like Arthur Miller and Tom Stoppard, there's always at least one white man in their plays, someone who represents them.
Right.
So I do. So it might be someone who's younger instead of that, but I'm starting to ramble now.
No, not at all. That's really interesting. I think it's really important. I think identifying that representation is critical, and certainly as hearing your voice and your point of view is really important. And
thanks.
Is that meaningful for you and your work? You said you made a pact with yourself. Why, and what does that mean to you? And
well, I think I was starting to just try to be too generic and say to theater companies, look, your audience would like this play, and just to be leaning back and not leaning too much, don't want to scare anyone away. And I thought, no, I'll write what I want to write, and hopefully I will find a theater who wants that and who respects that. So,
a play like this this play has been at Stratford and it's been at Western Canada, so it's had some life, and so that's fantastic. Can you speak a little about its journey?
Yeah, this is its 6th production.
Incredible.
And I mean, ask any Canadian playwright, it's difficult to get a 2nd production.
Yes.
So this is... And did you know that there is this thing called the pandemic?
Yes, we do.
The first production was February 2020. Our closing performance was February 29th. And there have been 5 productions since then during the pandemic. I mean, I still can't believe it.
It's incredible, but it also speaks to this coming back from the pandemic and the kind of cultural conversations that came out of that time, that these are stories that we want to hear.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. That 2 productions were planned before the pandemic even happened. So there was clearly interest. But it was born of my frustration watching The Crown, which is a brilliant series, and seeing that episode where they went to Kenya and the Black people were so insignificant. They were just in the background. I thought, you went to a continent filled with Black people and all you have them do is like smile at the princess? And I just was so frustrated. And it was the next day that my friend said, did you know that Thousand Islands Playhouse is looking for a playwrights unit, people who want to write about the aftermath or the continuing presence of colonialism? Because this playwrights unit was meeting in 2017, Canada's 150th anniversary of Confederation. It's like, is this something we should celebrate? Is this something we should look at? And I just sat in front of my laptop and said, dear Thousand Islands Playhouse, I have an idea for a play. And I sent it off filled with typos, and they just went, oh, okay, yeah, you can be in our unit. And I wrote it in, like, we met once a month, and each month we would bring pages, new pages to read. And as the plays got, it was me and two other playwrights. And as the plays got longer, we would just pick excerpts of what we'd written so far. So my pact each month when we met was to have at least double the pages from the last time. So our first meeting was in March, and by December, I had a 95-page play.
That's fantastic.
It doesn't always happen that way, but it's just sort of flew out of me. Yeah.
And also you had real work ethic around it. Like
I had to have something to prove. I had to have something to show each month when we made the 3.5-hour drive to Thousand Islands to get an Aquay. Yeah.
And so you've been in other playwrights units.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you speak a little about that and how that's fed into your process as a writer?
I love playwrights units because they give me accountability.
Yeah.
They're not pushing towards, but I just love the help and the support and the feedback. The money is the lowest on the list, actually. It's nice, it's helpful, but just having that person in your corner or that team in your corner, just have someone read the dramaturgy, the readings out loud, so I hear it in voices other than my own. It's really, really helpful. So I've been in them for Obsidian Theatre, Roseney Theatre, Tapestry Opera. It's a great experience. Yep.
Fantastic. What drew you to the arts in the first place? Like what, as a kid, what did you see a play? What sparked your interest?
Well, I was a really shy kid, and I came from Jamaica when I was 6. My parents had already been here for 3 years, and the 4 of us kids were waiting in Jamaica until they could send for us. And then we got here and we met our new sister, who was 8 months old. And there was just a lot going on. I'm sure just a lot of culture.
There's 6 siblings.
Then 5 years later, they had yet another kid. Yeah. My parents.
And where do you fall in the birth order?
I'm second oldest and the oldest girl. We're 3 and 3, just like the Brady Bunch. And it's pronounced Marcia, not Marcia. Anyway, it's very confusing. But I just, you couldn't hear me if I was standing next to you in a room. I was just so soft-spoken and so shy, but I read a lot and I had a huge imagination. Anne of Green Gables is my favorite book because I'm like her.
Yeah.
I am like her in so many ways, and I totally get her. So the school that I went to was one of the pilot projects for this organization called Inner City Angels. So these schools would get these arts groups like Young People's Theatre and National Ballet, and we got to see so many performances come in, and we'd get to go into the school gym and watch them, and people were like, oh, no school for this afternoon, whatever, and I'd be like, oh, I get to see a play, and I would just sit there and I would forget where I was. It would so many times, at the end of the performance, someone would have to snap me out of it, and I just loved it. And so when I was 9, there was a school play. And I don't think we auditioned for it. We just showed up, and if we wanted to be in it, we were given a part. So it was Space Cinderella, and I was the fairy god robot.
Yes, great part.
That was it.
Your bit.
I was given the words to say. I was told how to say them. Everyone around me had to follow the same rules. And when people laughed, it was with me, not at me. And I was hooked, but I kept it a secret because everyone said they wanted to be a movie star, and that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
I meant that I wanted to be on stage and perform and tell stories. I felt comfortable there.
How did your family feel about it? The way that all families do when we enter the arts.
Did I mention I'm an immigrant?
Yes.
My mother, as she said, my dear late mother, she could still be walking on the beach barefoot in Jamaica. She only came here for our sake, right? But I'm so glad she got to see a bit of my success before she died. Like there was a play that I wrote for her, and all the plays I write now are for her. And it was my thank you to her, because she only got the idea to leave Jamaica when she started having daughters, and she didn't want us growing up the way that she did. Still, it's a very patriarchal society, and she wanted just us to have more options and to just, so she got to see the play Say Ginger Ale that I wrote, which was my tribute to her, and she cried and she loved it, and she got over it. She was very proud. But in the early days, I hear of other people whose parents say things like, anything you put your mind to, you just do it. And my parents were like, just keep your head down. Don't make a fuss. Everyone will blame you if something goes wrong. So it was hard to justify this deep passion that I had with her advice, which was, be careful out there. Just don't stand out.
Well, it's really courageous to do that. And also it's very male-dominated, white male-dominated.
You don't say.
Yeah, just a little. So to be able to have that kind of success, I'm so happy to hear that your mom got to see that. She must be really proud.
Yeah, she
to
was.
see also if that's what she wanted to be, breaking through that patriarchy and finding that independence. You're living it. Do you remember coming to Canada? Do you remember that time? And
I do.
Can you speak about what that was like for you?
Well, I missed my parents, especially my mother, a lot. And then we finally got the call that my grandmother was taking the four of us to finally be with them. And this is part of, I tell the story in my play Say Ginger Ale. When I couldn't understand what the flight attendant was saying because her Canadian accent was so thick. She kept asking me this question, and my grandmother just nudged me and said, say ginger ale. And then a few minutes later, I was given this drink. I didn't know that I'd asked for ginger ale.
Right.
I thought I'd said hello in Canadian or something, ginger ale, And then when they found out that the four of us were moving to Canada, we got to go in the cockpit just before the play made its descent to see the country. So I got to see Canada from the sky. That doesn't happen anymore, I'm sure.
No kidding.
No way. Yeah. So I do remember. It was kind of rough. I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know. My parents didn't tell us that the weather was going to get colder.
Yeah,
they didn't tell us that there was snow. I hated the cold at first. I mean, I love winter now, but I wouldn't go outside unless I absolutely had to.
You grew up in Toronto.
Yeah. But this is like the perfect fit for me. I think. Yeah.
What kind of research did you undertake to write this play? What was your process around that?
Well, I actually knew quite a bit about Elizabeth already. I was such a fan when I was a kid because it was real life fairy tale.
Right.
I got over that. That I wanted, when I created because I wanted to give lines to the Africans, and I wanted to give the main Black character, Mercy. I didn't want her to just mistrust white people or hate white people. I wanted her to have a real reason to feel contempt or nervousness if an outsider comes into her place. So that's the main research I did, where I found out about the women's revolt in Murang'a, Kenya, and there were so many things like that where people were just told, this isn't your land anymore. There's no paperwork, there's nothing, this is ours now. And there were ads placed in newspapers, move to Kenya, farm this land, and then they would just farm the land until it was absolutely useless. It's the cause of a lot of droughts in Africa these days, because when English farm their own land, they do all the things that you do to be a responsible farmer. You let it lie fallow, you rotate crops, you do all these different things, but they didn't care. So that's still being felt today. And I thought, well, I think that's a good thing, to make someone angry and mistrust the English. Yeah.
And then that you spoke too about joining that playwrights unit that wanted to talk about colonialism. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's so many parallels to Canada and mm-hmm. land rights and what we're working through and facing today with reconciliation and Indigenous peoples and the lands that we're taking. There's so many similarities really to that colonial system in Kenya.
Yeah, but that is what colonialism is. And for the most part, for me, it's emotional research as opposed to factual. I don't want people to have to take notes to follow along. So the people in this play, there aren't the bad guys and the good guys. They're people who live in the same system, but it benefits one group so much more than the other. And it's just, we don't really think about it. And I just wanted to go there and create some realistic people and show what this system that we kind of know about, what's that like for people living it,
I guess the magic of storytelling too is that we can see it through others' eyes and empathy building.
I hope so.
Yes.
I have a lot of empathy for Elizabeth. Who would know what it's like to be her? So I focused on what I would know, not that I'm a mother, but how does a mother feel about leaving her children? How does a woman feel about leaving her father when he's not well? So I was trying to be honest about things like that. And there's a lot in the play where she's a hardworking, devoted woman, and I believe that was true of her, because she had a lot to prove after her uncle abdicated, and she kept her nose clean, she did her job well, and I just can't imagine that amount of pressure. So
I wonder too, so you wrote the play, and now since we've lost, she's passed, mm-hmm. and also now there's so much conversation, I think even more so, about the role of the monarchy and the relevance of the monarchy. Do you think that impacts audiences and how they're taking in this play?
Yeah, let's just say I'm really glad it had as many productions as it did before she died, because now I know that the 6 were they've done before her, so it's not there's not this curiosity that's oh, did you know the queen that just died? There's a play featuring her. Let's go see it. It was on its own. It had its own merit. That's what I was trying to say. It had its own merit for these 6 productions, and that's good to know, because I knew it was a possibility because of her age. Please, no, please wait until after closing night, please. So yeah, that's a good life.
It's a good life. It's interesting to see. I wonder too, just about if audiences take it in differently, and I guess we can't really know. We'll see it post.
Let's put it this way: the way that I found out that Elizabeth had died was that the woman in the American production who played Elizabeth called and said, "I just heard the news. How are you?" And I was like, "What news? What are you talking about?" And that's what she told me. The second person to tell me was Sarah Topham, who'd played Elizabeth in the Stratford production. And then the third person was another actor from the US version. And that was during the film festival. And I was walking to a theater, and this young man chased after me and told me he'd seen Serving Elizabeth at Thousand Islands, and that I was the first person he thought of when she died. And several other people have told me that I was the first person that they thought of. I never would have guessed I'd have this connection with her.
It's incredible. What do you want audiences to take away? What do you want them to take from this play?
Well, I just want them to be open. I know that there are people who, when they find out that I've written this play or a Black woman has written this play, they think that I'm just going to be a hatchet job, that I'm going to criticize, and I don't. But I just say be open, because there are people who did watch it and then they'll quote things from it that didn't happen, because even this level of criticism is too much for what they think. Yeah.
You've had pushback against this.
Yeah. Someone once said that that I claimed in the play that I thought that something was just as important as King George's death, and he was talking about this thing that didn't happen in the play. So perception. I think he must have just been watching it like this, criticize Regina Elizabeth. I don't know.
Interesting, though, really, it is about perception.
Yeah.
Because I think, it's beautifully balanced.
Yeah, and there was this one man after the Western Canada Theatre production, and he was clearly a little bit offended by what he'd just seen. And he wondered if I was contemplating maybe doing some rewrites before it plays in Ontario, because there's so many monarchists there. And I said, no, the play stands. I'm not changing anything. I don't think I'm unfair at all. And then after it was officially over, he sought me out, and then he said, what would I think how about if you got a Black actress to play Elizabeth and the white actress to play the cook? And that for me just shows you, when people are so used to the story being told from a certain point of view, that it shocks them when someone else is front and center. And I said after I took a breath, and I said, kind of, I didn't say it this way, but that's been done. Like the white person telling the Black person's story, right. That's been done. I'm in charge this time. I don't there are lots of great actors who can play these parts. So he was just I said, just if the people are around, I wanted to represent the culture. He said, oh, well, if the culture is important to you. He just was confused. And there are people who have come, I don't want to give anything away, but the play is called Serving Elizabeth, and there are people thinking, there she's in the first scene. No, she's not in the second. Oh no? Okay. So, yeah. And does everyone maybe figure out what the double entendre of the title is? Serving Elizabeth. Cool. So Serving Elizabeth and Serving Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. Yeah, whatever. It was initially called Heavy as the Head, but from one of the Henry plays, Uneasy as the Head that wears the crown. Apparently during a certain demographic thought that it was a sexual innuendo, so I had to get...
Wow! There's a lot of arrows, right? There's a lot of things to consider, but that's part of, I guess, the vulnerability and of putting your work out there. Mm-hmm. And
when I write, because I'm an actor, I don't spell everything out in there with the stage directions or stage business. I trust that the director and actors will find their own interpretation. But I have to find a balance, because there are some people who just aren't used to having that freedom or whatever it is, so they'll just do what's there on the surface. It's like, no, make it yours. Do your special things. So because I get to see it different ways, I'm learning how to write in a way that people will figure out that this is the tone or this is the meaning. Like one of my favorite stage directions I've ever written was about a couple, and I say they kiss. It is the most unromantic kiss in history. So I haven't told them how to do it, but I can't wait to see those people do that, and how every single time. I love each time there's this scene from a rom-com in this, and I love the different ways that each of them have done it. in
So you're
Serving
like seeing the
Elizabeth.
discovery of the other the artists.
Yeah, it's great. Like you have to learn to put your script together and then let it go and know that it's someone else's blueprint from then on. But I've just learned I have to meet almost halfway and make sure they understand that this is actually funny or this is a really serious moment. Like it's a balancing act.
That's a real gift to other artists, though, that stage direction, because what fun for actors in a room and directors to like figure out how we're going to tackle this. So that's really generous.
Because a lot of times directors and actors scratch out the stage directions anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Other questions? Yeah.
Is it like writing your book? Do you find that you need a sort of a real break in between, or do you find you go away from one to another, like within a matter of months, to do something else? Or
First of all, I have friends who are novelists, and I don't know how they do it. That's a lot. What I've learned is when I finish a draft and I hand it over to the artistic director, I will go insane waiting for them to give me their notes, waiting for them to let me know, yeah, I like it, or no, let's make some changes. So what I've learned to do then is start writing another script, because that will keep me sane and occupied, because if I don't, I will want to rewrite that script. I'll say, forget the thing I sent you last week. I've got it, I've done it better. So, yeah.
That's very disciplined.
So initially I was going to write like 1952 in the first act and then 2015 in the second act. And then I was writing act one, and I thought, oh, this is what I want to happen in 2015. And then I would write that scene and then I'd go back to it. And then I think, actually, that's how it should go. That's how it is. And plus, I wanted to show how much the past and the present have in common. And when I watch plays, I can forget some details from the first act. So I just wanted to keep things fresh. Yeah. I'd heard that Churchill had some internment camps in Kenya, and one of the prisoners was Barack Obama's grandfather. And I thought, wow, that's a great storyline. And I was doing that, and I didn't realize it was after the time period that I said about 2 years later than that. It's like, oh, yeah.
Still happened.
Yeah, it still happened. Initially, Mercy and Faith were siblings, with Mercy being like 10 years older, and Montague was Mercy's husband. And then I just realized that there's more drama, there's more tension if it's mother-daughter. And why not have Montague be a love interest? Why not? Yeah. Thank you, Mary Frances. I just have to thank Mary Frances. This theater has been so amazing, down to just any detail that I could ask for. Even the food that the characters eat on stage is the Kenyan food. I mean, no one's ever thought of that before. This is its sixth production. And I just thought, oh yeah, we could do that. Anyway.
Amazing, thanks. Well, we're so glad to have you here. I'll just ask you one last question. And you spoke about how you saw theater in school when you were in school, and that was your introduction to this really magical world that we all get to enjoy together. And so what is theater's role now? It's a big, hard question. And now that theater and drama isn't in school anymore, what kind of role can it play?
I wasn't a good student. People always assumed that I was. I wasn't. But when there'd be things like art class, or those were the things that would make it worth it, you know? So, I mean, I think it's really short-sighted, and there's so many of us who learn in different ways. Reading a history book, I don't take things in the same way that I do when I watch a play. And I don't know, I kind of have no words. It's so hard when you're in this business and always having to justify yourself or why you need to be there. People don't know how important we are. Maybe even if you don't see plays, you're probably taking part in something or witnessing something that theater-trained people had a hand in. Maybe they moved over to TV, or they moved over to politics or to journalism or whatever. You know, we do a lot. I don't know. I'm losing my words. This is why I write, is because then I'll get a second draft and then someone else will dramaturge it. No one has to see that rough mess that I started with. But I think it's short-sighted, and we need all kinds of art in school the same way we need sports in school. And that's what whenever you're looking to vote, if you put in the word culture or art and you just see what pops up, which candidates pop up. I remember one year I put in culture and agriculture came up, like none of them. Anyway, it's rough, but anyway, so it's great being accepted by a theater like Theatre Aquarius. I'm an Aquarius, by the way. And just, yeah, I think that means we're supposed to go.
So thank you.
Thanks, sorry.
So thank you. No, thank you so much. We're so grateful that you could come, and this is a really beautiful piece. I'm excited for you all to see it. So thank you for sharing this time with us.
Oh, thank you.
Enjoy the
Thank you
show.
so much. Yes.